One sentence. That's all it took. A 72-year-old retired engineer in Florida answered one question at a backyard barbecue. So, what's your pension looking like? And within 6 months, 3 friendships he'd had for 30 years were gone. No fight, no falling out. They just stopped calling. He said later, I didn't lose them because I was rich. I lost them because I removed the mystery. After 60, the most dangerous things you can do don't happen at a hospital or on a highway. They happen at a dinner table, with your mouth open. Robert Greene wrote in the 48 Laws of Power, always say less than necessary. The more you say, the more common you appear, and the less in control. Today, 5 questions you should never answer after 60. 2 bonus habits that silently destroy relationships. And a principle underneath all of it that might be the most important thing you hear this year. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who was born a slave and died one of the most quoted minds in history, said it in 6 words. Speak only when you must. Briefly. Let's begin. Question number 1. Never answer questions about your money. Your pension, your savings, your inheritance, the value of your home, none of it. Here's why this matters more than you think. Researchers at Carnegie Mellon University, Carbone and Lowenstein, published a study showing that self-disclosure operates like a biological drive. The same way hunger pushes you to eat, emotional arousal pushes you to talk. The more excited or anxious you feel in a conversation, the more your filters drop. And the information that slips out, you can never pull it back in. Now think about what happens when you give someone your number. Psychologists call it the horn effect, a cognitive bias where one surprising piece of information rewrites how people see everything else about you. If your pension is higher than theirs, you become the rich one. If it's lower, you become the one who didn't plan well. Either way, a single number just replaced your entire identity in their mind. You didn't change. Their perception of you did. And there's a word for what follows. Schadenfreude. It's the quiet pleasure people feel when someone they envy stumbles. A Princeton University study using fMRI brain scans found that when participants heard about misfortune happening to a higher status person, the brain's reward centers actually lit up. Pleasure from someone else's pain. This isn't cruelty. It's human wiring. And the moment you reveal your financial comfort, you become a target for it, whether anyone means to or not. Let me tell you about a woman named Dorothy. She lived in a quiet suburb outside Chicago. After her husband passed, she found he'd left a larger life insurance policy than she expected. She mentioned it once, just once, at her book club. Within weeks, 2 of the women started with the comments. Must be nice. Some of us actually have to worry about these things. Dorothy wasn't bragging. She was processing grief out loud. But the number stuck, and the warmth left the room. She told a friend of mine, I traded a secret for loneliness, and I didn't even know I was making the deal. So what do you say when someone asks? You smile, and you give them this. I'm comfortable, nothing fancy, but I sleep well at night. That's it. No numbers, no details, no comparisons. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, most of what we say and do is not essential. If you can eliminate it, you'll have more time and more tranquility. Tranquility. That's the reward for keeping your mouth closed. Your wealth is your business. Your peace is your priority. And the smartest financial move you can make after 60 isn't about where you invest. It's about what you don't say. Question number 2. Stop answering questions about your children, especially the good parts. This one is counterintuitive. We spend our whole lives raising them, and when they succeed, it feels natural to share that pride. Your son made partner at his firm. Your daughter bought her first home. Your grandchild got a full-ride scholarship. These moments are real and they matter deeply. But here is the truth nobody tells you. Your joy, spoken out loud, can quietly become someone else's wound. There was a retired teacher in Ohio who loved talking about her grandson. Brilliant kid, full scholarship, the whole story. She mentioned it at a neighborhood lunch. Across the table sat a woman whose own grandson had just dropped out of college. She didn't say a word, but she never came back to that lunch again. The teacher found out months later, through someone else, what had happened, and she said something that stopped me cold. I thought I was sharing love. I was actually broadcasting distance. Psychologists call this spontaneous trait transference. When you describe your child's achievements, the listener doesn't just hear facts, they subconsciously associate those traits with you. You become the one with the successful family, and that label creates a gap. The listener starts measuring their own life against your story, and the gap doesn't inspire them, it isolates them. Here's how serious this is. AARP published a study showing that 40% of Americans aged 45 and older now report feeling lonely, up from 35% just a few years earlier. Among men, 17% said they have no close friends at all. The University of Michigan National Poll on Healthy Aging found that 1 in 4 adults over 50 feels they don't have enough close friends. Oxford psychologist Robin Dunbar, the one who gave us Dunbar's number, found that while we can maintain around 150 casual connections, the people we can truly rely on in a crisis, 5, maybe fewer. After 60, those 5 people are everything. Every careless comment about your family's success is a small tax on one of those 5 relationships, and you can't afford to lose even one. So, what do you say when someone asks about your kids? Keep it light. Everyone's doing their thing, keeping busy, I'm just glad they're healthy. That's warm, that's honest, and it protects the space between you and the person asking. You're not lying, you're caring. And here's the deeper truth. Your children's success is not your trophy, it's their story. By holding it gently instead of waving it around, you honor them and protect your friendships at the same time. Bronnie Ware, the palliative care nurse who spent years at the bedsides of the dying, wrote that the 4th most common regret people shared in their final weeks was this: I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends, not money, not career, friendships. And the fastest way to lose a friendship after 60 isn't distance, it's comparison. Question number 3. Never answer questions about your personal struggles, your health fears, or the mistakes you made in the past. We live in a time that celebrates openness. Be vulnerable, they say. Share your truth. And yes, with the right person, at the right time, there is value in that. But Brené Brown, the researcher who made vulnerability mainstream, said something most people missed. In her book, Daring Greatly, she wrote, "Oversharing is not vulnerability. It often results in disconnection, distrust, and disengagement." She called it floodlighting, turning on every light at once, blinding everyone in the room, including yourself. Here's what happens when you share your health scare at a dinner. You tell one person about the lump they found, about the test results you're waiting for, about the nights you can't sleep. You're not looking for advice, you're looking for comfort. But Psychology Today reported that oversharing leaves listeners uncomfortable. And later, even the speaker regrets revealing so much. The relief you feel in the moment turns into regret by morning. And what about past mistakes? The failed business, the marriage that fell apart, the investment you wish you could take back? Those stories feel like they belong to a different person now, but when you bring them into today's conversation, people don't hear past tense. They hear present character. There was a retired business owner, late 60s, who joined a community volunteer group. At one of the early meetings, someone asked what he did before. He could have said, "I ran a printing business for 20 years. Instead, he told the full story, including the bankruptcy in 2008. He was being honest, but from that day on, every time his name came up, someone added, "Nice guy. Lost his business, though." He told me later, "I gave them a label, and they never looked past it." So what do you say when someone presses about your past or your struggles? You redirect. I've had my share of ups and downs, but I'm focused on what's ahead. Or even simpler, I'm doing better than I deserve. That one usually gets a laugh, and it closes the door without slamming it. Epictetus taught that there are things within our control and things outside it. Your past is outside. What people think of it is outside. But what you choose to say about it right now, that is entirely yours. Protect it the way you'd protect your home. Not every visitor deserves a tour of every room. Now, those were the 3 questions on the thumbnail, but I told you to stay, and here's why. There are 2 more questions that almost nobody talks about, but they're just as dangerous. Maybe more, because they don't sound like threats. They sound like normal conversation. Question number 4. Stop answering questions about your health, the complaints, the procedures, the daily aches. This is different from question 3. Question 3 was about deep vulnerability, the cancer scare, the depression, the things that terrify you. This one is about the everyday, the knee that won't bend right, the doctor you saw last Tuesday, the medication they switched you to. After retirement, something happens to conversation. The Quora forums and aging care communities are full of the same observation. Once you leave work, the biggest thing that happens to you each week is a medical appointment. And slowly, without realizing it, your health becomes your only topic. There was a man in Arizona, 74, who had prostate surgery. The recovery was difficult. He was scared. And every time he met his golf buddies for breakfast, he gave them the full update, the procedure, the side effects, the follow-up appointments. He wasn't complaining. He was processing fear the only way he knew how. But after about 3 months, one of the guys quietly told him, "Frank, we love you, but every breakfast feels like a hospital visit now." Frank was devastated, not because it was cruel, but because it was true. He'd turned his pain into everyone else's burden without meaning to. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." But here's what he didn't say, and what I'll add. When you speak your suffering out loud at every table, you force other people to suffer in their imagination too, and eventually they stop sitting down. What do you say instead? "I'm hanging in there, the doctors are on it, that's enough," and then pivot. But tell me about you. What have you been up to? The fastest way to keep a friend after 60 is to make them feel like the most interesting person at the table, not to make them your audience. Question number 5. Never talk openly about your future plans, especially inheritance, your will, or who gets what. This one destroys families, and it starts with the best of intentions. You're being transparent. You're being fair. You're sitting everyone down and explaining how you've divided things up. But the moment you say, "the house goes to your brother," something shifts in the room that can never shift back. A retired couple in Jacksonville learned this the hard way. The father casually mentioned at Thanksgiving that he planned to leave the lake house to his older son because the older son had helped maintain it for years. It made sense to him, it was fair, but the younger son heard something entirely different. He heard, "You matter less." They didn't speak for 14 months. The father told a neighbor, "I was trying to prevent a fight after I'm gone. Instead, I started one while I'm still here." There's a psychological principle at work here. When you announce a plan, any plan, it creates expectation. And expectation, once planted in someone else's mind, becomes an entitlement. NYU research related to what psychologists call the Zeigarnik effect shows that unfinished business occupies the mind more powerfully than completed tasks. When you tell your children what they'll inherit, you hand them an unfinished promise, and that promise lives in their head, rent-free, reshaping every future interaction with their siblings. What do you do instead? You handle it privately. You put it in writing, with a lawyer, and if anyone asks, you say, "Everything is taken care of. You don't need to worry about any of that." Keep the details between you and your attorney. Love your children equally at the table. Divide your assets quietly on paper. Those are two different jobs. Don't confuse them. Now, I promised you 2 bonus tips. These aren't questions people ask you. These are habits that quietly push people away without you ever realizing it. And once I tell you, you won't be able to unsee them. Bonus number 1. Stop giving advice nobody asked for. After 60, you have experience, wisdom, perspective. You've seen things go wrong 100 times, and you know exactly how to prevent it. So when your friend tells you about her daughter's divorce, or your neighbor mentions his new investment, or your son describes how he's raising your grandchild, every cell in your body wants to say, "Well, here's what you should do." Don't. Psychology. Today published research showing that unsolicited advice is rarely experienced as caring. It's experienced as invasive. It says, "I know better than you." And even if you do, especially if you do, saying it uninvited creates distance, not closeness. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "Great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Small minds discuss people." Here's what I'd add. The smallest minds of all discuss other people's decisions. When someone shares a problem with you after 60, the most powerful thing you can say is not advice. It's this. "That sounds hard. I'm here if you need me." 9 words, and they do more than any lecture ever could. You keep your wisdom, and you keep your friend. Bonus number 2. Never repeat what someone told you in confidence. This is the fastest way to lose trust after 60, and it's the most common. Someone tells you something personal over coffee. Their marriage is struggling. Their child is in trouble. Their health is worse than they let on. And then, a week later, at a different table, with different people, it slips out. "Well, she told me that." The moment you become someone who carries other people's stories to other people's ears, you become someone no one trusts with anything real, and the worst part, both sides find out. The person you told finds out you can't keep a secret, and the person you told it to, they now know you'll do the same with theirs. Robert Greene's law for, again, always say less than necessary. This applies to your own stories, and even more to the stories that were never yours to tell. So let's bring it all together. 5 questions. 2 bonus habits. 1 principle underneath them all. What you don't say after 60 protects everything you've spent a lifetime building. Your friendships, your family, your dignity, your peace. This isn't about becoming cold. This isn't about closing off. It's about choosing, deliberately, carefully, what deserves your words and what deserves your silence. There was a philosophy professor, 91 years old, who was asked by a student after his last lecture, "Professor, what's the one thing you wish you'd learned earlier?" He was quiet for a long time, and then he said, "That the things I didn't say protected me far more than the things I did." Bronnie Ware spent years at the bedsides of dying patients. The number 1 regret she heard, more than any other, was this: "I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me." Think about that. The deepest regret of the dying wasn't about doing more, it was about performing less, explaining less, proving less. It was about choosing finally to live quietly and honestly, on your own terms. You don't owe anyone your numbers. You don't owe anyone your children's report card. You don't owe anyone the chapters you've already closed. You don't owe anyone a medical update. And you don't owe anyone a preview of your will. What you owe yourself, the only debt that truly matters now, is peace. And peace, as Marcus Aurelius wrote nearly 2,000 years ago, comes from eliminating what isn't essential. If this video reached you today, I want to ask you one thing. Share it with someone over 50 who might need to hear it. Not everyone will click on this, but someone in your life is out there right now, answering one of these questions at a dinner table, and slowly losing something they can't get back. You might be the reason they stop. Leave a comment. Tell me which of the 5 hit you the hardest, or which bonus tip you wish you'd heard 10 years ago. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the bell so we can keep sitting down together like this. One sentence in the comments might change someone's tomorrow. Thank you for being here. Remember, today is the youngest day of the rest of your life.